Hi, how are you?
Morning. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
How is your heart doing, honey?
My heart is feeling very joyous at this moment because we get to have conversation and I really enjoy speaking and talking with my beautiful friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you. And I do enjoy our conversations. You recently published a book called Breathe, Breathe, Breathe. Can you give the listeners a sneak peek?
As a young child, I've experienced a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, as well as trauma. And I had no idea whatsoever that mindfulness or meditation is something that exists in the world. And the book, Breathe, 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 the intention is to teach children the power of learning to connect to their breath. And throughout the book, there's simple pictures to help cultivate being grounded through touching base and connecting with the right here, right now in the individual's environment. And the intention of this book was a book that I would have wished to have had at a young age.
When you look at the profession that you chose, can you see why you chose it?
Mm-hmm. Now I can. Originally, when I first chose, so I work as an occupational therapist. I work with children 0 to 18 years old, and I also work with parents, and I do a little bit of parent coaching as needed as well. And for those that might not know, occupational therapy, simply put, is anything that we do in our daily life that is needed for functionality. So it can be from sleeping to eating to dressing to writing with a pen or a pencil, being able to sit in an upright position, being able to get from one room to the other, being able to drive in my car. If an individual is having any challenges with any of those skills, that's where an occupational therapist can come in. And in terms of pediatrics, children's primary occupation is play. So a lot of the times as a provider, I'm looking at what is their play skills, what is their fine motor, their small finger motion, what is their large movements, what is their ability to see and follow with their eyes, what is their sensory processing. And one thing that really stood out to me recently within the past few years is sensory and sensory processing, which is our ability to understand and interpret things with what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're tasting, what we're feeling, where our body is in space, our movement and balance system. And I think as a young kid, I really may have struggled, especially with grading the amount of pressure when it comes to reading or when it comes to writing. I had a tendency to really hold things really, really, really tightly. And it's the realization that as a young child, it's occupational therapy is something that I could have most likely have benefited from because I grew up in a very closed environment where therapy was like woo-woo and it's something you never do. It's the realization that it's something that I really would have wanted to receive as a young kid. And so grateful and thankful to be in a profession where I'm constantly morphing with what I do and to work with individuals to help them tap into their own meaning, their own purpose, so that they can perform their best that they can with their functionality within their daily life, while also taking in consideration their emotion regulation, their ability to modulate when they're sad or when they're upset, how to go about that and process it in a more functional way that they can engage in occupational performance. My doctoral experience really shed a lot of light on how in graduate school, pre-doctorate work and in undergrad and even a little bit at the end of high school, how I was so attached to grades and doing well. And I spent so much time and so much effort and so much pressure. When I got that E minus, I would have a meltdown. Why? Because I was associating and linking myself that I am that great. And if I'm an A minus, what does that mean for me as a person? And now throughout this doctoral work over the past few years, the realization that I'm not my grades and I'm not my degree and I'm not my papers, because some papers are good and some papers are maybe have opportunity for learning and growing. And it's the realization of who I am is beyond everything and nothing.
Yeah. And, it's really, for how I've seen it too, it's the learning of giving it a definition, meaning that you're going to make mistakes. But we've been kind of fed this thing of perfection and get it like this and not realizing, no, it's a process to get there. Sometimes you understand it very quickly. Other times it's a process. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yet the comparison trap It's a steep one, I tell you, because when we're young, we have to compare and see what's going on so that we can feel safe. So we have our mirror neurons that are in our brain that mimic behavior from others. So that's why your environment has a big play on your foundation of who you are and developing your nervous system. So depending on what you're seeing all the time, you're going to mimic that because you think, well, that's the way to develop and grow, and they must have a certain ingredient. Yet to touch back, like you said, where is it that we're teaching children at a young age of their own essence to be within themselves? Even though they'll have this sensation of grasping externally, to always look within first to see why there's that grasping. Why is there that feeling of feeling unsafe or having certain emotions that are firing up? And being able to have a space to talk about that. Yet in the education system, we don't have time for that right now. We just, produce, academic, and nothing taught about the inner world. And we're seeing how it's impacting a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Education in its sense, when you ask people, well, let me ask you, what is your definition of education?
That's a very good question. I would define education as using different ideas, skills, resources as opportunity for learning and for growing. That's how I perceive and look at as education.
I think all skills have to be learned and taught in a way of recognizing and letting the person know that it's within them. It's not somebody else giving it to you. You have to develop yourself.
And it's also tapping into their motivation and determination to want to develop it and want it to do. Because a lot of times, sometimes when I'm working with kids, if they're not motivated or not interested, and I'll tell the parents, I want to work with a child or your child that's interested and motivated. I don't want them to be coming into session just because mom and dad is saying to. I want them to be coming in because there's something that they want to work on. And if it's mom and dad wants a child to work on X and child wants to work on B, and I'll tell parents, we want to work on B right now. And maybe when the child is ready to work on A, we'll tap into that. But for right now, we want to do what the child is interested in and tapping into their motivation. And I think it goes with education and the educational system offering children the opportunity to do classes and to do things that spark their interest and their motivation so they can tap into their skills. And I think that's really what's lacking within the educational system. It's teaching children math and history and science when maybe numbers is not of interest for them and they do really well with poetry or with writing. So giving children different tracks and giving them opportunity to do things that they really enjoy, and then cultivating that passion and that joy and that want for that education and that want for learning will kind of like have a 180 with how they're looking at intellect and how they're looking at themselves and how they're looking at maybe society, especially in relation to work and vocation and vocational training.
Everybody wants to, highlight the teacher or highlight the parent. Yet individually, yes, we're responsible for our inner state. Yet we're not made to do this alone. And I see within school systems, where is the community? Where is the community of the teachers can lean on each other? Rather than comparing that my classroom is like this, your classroom is like this. If we look, the comparison is deeply seated into a lot of what we do. And there's not enough space to have the vulnerability to discuss the challenges that we have. Because the system, the curriculums don't want to hear about it. Give us our data, give us our reporting, and that's it. Yet there's a big burden put on the teacher of having to help facilitate a space for, some classes have 20 to 30. Well, in our junior kindergarten, senior kindergarten, you can have up to 30 plus kids. So when you have from the age of 3 to 5 and 6 in a room together and only have 2 adults, you expect there not to be mayhem? And not to have these teachers go on burnouts and nervous breakdowns and have, we're suspending kids that are 3 and 4 out of a school system, thinking that they should have the ability to understand how to interact with other humans. And so these are the things where it's like, where is the community in our school systems? There's a big burden put onto teachers. to learn a lot of things. And if they don't even have an insight of their own mental health, they don't even know what they're projecting out to others. And they're just trying to follow the needs of the curriculum because I have a paycheck to earn. I don't have time for all this other stuff because I don't even have time for myself. But there's lacking community, and more we're seeing things are being removed. The resources are being removed more and more. And the question, where is the community in the school systems? And I'm thankful you're creating that. I'm thankful you're creating a support system for them to be vulnerable and not think that you have a hierarchy and you know everything. Every little human's going to come and spark something in you. And you have to be curious to find out what that challenge is. But in this world, it's like a lot of it is, I don't have time for that. Shape up and fit in or get out. And it's like, well, is that education now? And then we wonder why our judicial system is the way it is. Our mental health system is the way it is. And then why it's turned into a business.
And in New York, or like United States, I think 1 in every 4 children have an anxiety disorder. I think there's depression, and it's the highest it's ever been. And I wonder if the rates of that has changed as well. Clearly, this system is broken. And there's a lot of challenges and a lot of problems there. And I think it just starts with having conversations like these, and keep on having conversation and advocating and trying to morph and change the system, or create a whole new system, and thinking about potentially creating my own school and creating an environment where children have the ability to choose what they want to do or choose what they don't want to do. And they have the ability to cultivate and mold the curriculum. And I think it's more of a Montessori type of approach. And people don't have to stay within the system. People have the ability to leave. People do have the ability to homeschool, because yes, the school system is lacking, and we have the ability to choose to place children in there or to not. And yes, teachers and school professionals, and I know teaching at university under pressure to do X, Y, and Z within the curriculum, and then trying to cultivate, personally for me, every class that I do teach as best as I can, I incorporate mindfulness in the beginning of the class just to help ground the students, because I know that there's a lot of information. So it's at every end where teachers are being pulled. And then I know I've done a lot of work, yet I still get triggered all the time. And I've been doing a lot of work since I'm 18 years old. It's more than 10 plus years at this point. So it's just an evolving process of learning and growing, and for people that are interested, and some people are not interested, and some people don't want to sit with oneself, and some people don't want to see what's hidden under that rug because the wounds are too painful. And then you'll have that with every profession. You'll have that with any field or with anything. And it is a problem collectively. And I believe it's even more of a problem, especially for people that are working with kids, because our kids are so innocent, and kids, I would say, deserve our utmost attention and our utmost love and care and TLC. Even the child that is tricky and challenging, within that, there's these tender eyes, and there's tender innate wanting to be seen, to be heard, and to be mattered. And some of the times, I think a lot of professionals sometimes don't have the education and don't have the ability to do that because it's not a skill that's taught. So then if we can start teaching it to kids at a young age, start teaching and training teachers, even if they're not looking at themselves, even if we can just start with something and then cultivate a little bit more of the community and the vulnerability, because vulnerability is very, very hard. Speaking can be a challenge, and especially if we're having beliefs connected to that as well. And it starts with that one person and that rippling effect of it. And there's problems, I believe, that eventually the system will fall down. Will it be in your and I's time? I don't know. But it's a system that has its challenges, and we can choose to be in it or not to be in it, or to homeschool or not to homeschool. And we can choose to try to create schools and environments that match children's need a little bit better. And for me personally, I'm working directly as best as I can with teachers and special educators and people that work in the school setting and principals to bring in a little bit of mindfulness and to bring in a little bit of the conversation that we're having today, and then really matching where they're at as well, and cultivate and teaching them how to cultivate even just that slight pause before they're reacting or responding with what they need to do or what they should do, and just taking a little bit of time for that reflection. And I think it really comes down to that self-awareness. I think that's the key of it. And if we have the ability to teach the teachers and teach parents and teach everyone about that, and then ultimately teach the students that and teach them how to use it as like a superpower. And when mom and dad is upset or teacher is upset, that child is instilled that it's not about them. It's not about what the teacher's saying to them. It's ultimately the teacher saying X, Y, and Z, and I can take it in one ear and out the other ear and just really continue to learn to be authentic and be true to myself, and learning that at a young age, and having some curriculum for the teacher and for the student, and for the teachers that aren't interested, giving them at least some tools to be able to help the children stay connected to themselves. Because ultimately, I believe that children are one of my greatest teachers. And if we can help teachers learn to do that, even if they're not interested in doing the work, and even if they are getting triggered, but at least starting to shift a little bit of that perspective and that little bit of that needle, so that they can maybe start a little bit at their own pace, own speed, matching what they're at. And if they're not interested, they're not interested. And maybe in 5 or 10 years, there will need to be some standardization within teachers training, principal training, administration training, where there needs to be this mental health component and some type of assessment that they need to take before they can actually be working with children. That would be like utopic.
What can you thank COVID for?
For the opportunity to be alone, and through the aloneness, offering the opportunity to be in the space and to really tap into deeper of the unknown and uncertainty. Prior to a year and a half ago, I didn't mind being alone. However, over COVID, especially living alone, I was kind of, I would say, forced to really just be with myself. And I've had a meditation practice for the past 5 years, and inconsistently for the past, I would say, 12 years at this point. And this really deepened my meditation. It deepened my connection and deepened my ability to see more of my anxiety and my sadness and my triggers. And it gave me the opportunity to really sit and be with the uncomfortable and be with the unknown even deeper than I ever have done over the past few years. And especially I've gone to meditation retreats, I've gone to meditation classes, and I've been speaking and teaching about it. And this further really deepened my connection to myself by allowing myself to be in the alone, to be in the space, and to be in the uncertainty.
You mentioned that since the age of 18, therefore 10 plus years, that you have been doing the inner work, and it's been a process, yet it's still evolving. Can you allow the listeners a sneak peek into your own personal triggers and what tools you use?
So I used to be from 0 till about 14, 17 years old. 14 years old, I already started to realize something is not right with what I wouldn't say not right. There was something, I was experiencing a lot of anxiety at 14 years old. And I really started to realize when I was 17, I was so fidgety. I was so fearful. I was so afraid of like the slightest sound, the slightest noise, the slightest movement in my environment. I would just go into flight or flight. And I started to realize this when I was about more cognitively, when I was 17 years old, that how can I be living the rest of my life so enmeshed and so caught up in anxiety? Like, I'm so young. Life expectancy is 78 years, if not longer. And I couldn't be in my own skin. I just felt so uncomfortable that I would need to be going up and about, riding a bike, talking to a friend, having conversation, going out for dinner with friends, working, especially early on in my career. I worked 60, 68, 70, I don't even know, hours a week, just so that I wouldn't be with this uncomfortableness and this feeling that I was always experiencing. Then I started to realize and started to speak with coaches and with therapists and with mentors and really good friends that were able to hold the space, and realizing that I've experienced a lot of trauma in my life. And I experienced trauma from 0 to 7 years old. And I didn't even have the ability to cultivate and put into words my experience, because some of it has got repressed. And then some of it, when I was 17 until pretty recent, it would come up as PTSD symptoms. So I was recently triggered in which a family member, throughout when I was about, I don't know the exact age per se, I would say maybe like 4 or 5 years old, numerously attempted to kill me. He would try to take a knife and stab me. He wanted to burn the house down. He would take me and try to throw me upside down over steps. He wanted to try to run my mom and I over in a car. And this directly was safety and fear of my own life at a very, very young age. And these memories, I kind of had an idea of it, but it wasn't something that was at the forefront. And over the past few years, it's something that did come up, and I kind of processed it, and I felt like I dealt with it, and I was in a very good space with it. However, a few weeks ago, a family member sent me a picture of this individual that contribute to trying to kill me. And a lot of the time, my mom as well. And that triggered another PTSD response, not as extreme as how it has been 5 years ago or 8 years ago. I was experiencing waking up at night and having like nightmares that this individual was coming into my house and that he was going to physically somehow going to be able to hurt me, take me away, or do some type of harm to my body. And I realized that during my day and during my meditation, I was experiencing like visions of childhood, vision of that car, vision of that knife, vision of me being placed upside down, almost this like outer body experience. And I was like, oh my goodness, I felt like I already processed this. I already dealt with this years ago. And then that picture really, really triggered it. And I looked at this picture as, how can I learn? How can I grow? Because in the present moment, in those moments, physiologically, I was experiencing an increased heart rate. And I can almost experience it right now as I'm speaking. And when I'm speaking, I'm breathing into it and I'm acknowledging and I'm telling myself, you are safe and you are fine. All is well. And it's creating this mantra, even as I'm experiencing it right now. And I know that I'm safe and all is well. And so I was experiencing increased heart rate. I was experiencing shakiness. My thoughts were so fast that I couldn't even figure out and decipher what was going on. And I knew what the trigger was. I knew it was from this family member. I knew it was the picture, and I was able to connect the dots to the best that I could from the childhood traumas that I've experienced from this individual. And then I posted in a private Facebook group that I know that I'm getting triggered. I'm not really sure what to do or how to go about this, to some degree. And then a suggestion was to write in my journal to this family and to this individual about all the different pains and all the different traumas and all the different things that he quote unquote caused, which I did. And then after that, write about what did that little girl need when she was experiencing the threat to her safety, and write about that in my journal, which I did. And a little bit of my processing of doing it, I went to the beach and I was very hesitant. I kept on like pushing it off for a few days because I knew that it was going to be something that was really, really hard. And it was really challenging, especially to keep on experiencing these PTSD-like symptoms. So I went to the beach and I went into a meditation. I gently placed my hand on my chest and my belly, and I gently acknowledged and focused on my breath. And every time the thought or a feeling, and I intentionally did bring up the thought and the feeling of what I was experiencing, I acknowledged and I focused onto the breath for a few moments. I opened up my journal and then I just started writing. And I just started really writing out of the heart, not paying attention to my grammar, words, sentence structure, just writing my fears and my experience and my anxiety and just putting it on the paper. And then at the end of that, I wrote, what did I need? And what I needed was safety. What I needed was security. What I needed was the validation and the reassurance that everything is okay and that I'm okay and that I'm fine and this person can't hurt me and everything, life is happening in the present moment. And my experience is physiologically from the past. And this is, I'm feeling ready and that I'm okay with releasing it. And symbolically, I took the paper. Actually, I didn't symbolically, I actually took the paper, tore the paper out of my journal and I threw it into the ocean. And I watched it ebb and flow away. And at the bottom of my journal, I wrote what I want to manifest. And what I wrote was something along the lines that I want to manifest just being with my experience and using it as learning and growing and cultivating an increased awareness so that I can be of service, and how this experience will not have a charge on my life anymore. And when it does come up, I will use it as learning and growing. And I took that paper, threw it into the water, watch it drift away in the ocean. And then when I turned around, I took a selfie, and there was this most magnificent, radiant sun that I've ever seen. And it was just like the universe telling me, like, your messages and your wants and has been received, and you've released, and let's let it be. And if this memory or these things come up, it's okay, and you'll learn and you'll continue to grow. For now, it's released, and the physiological response, I'm allowing it to just naturally leave my body, not try to push it away, not try to force it, just naturally feel it. And I just felt like this weight that was on me was just kind of like partially lifted. And then after that, for the coming weeks, there was no waking up. There was no like panicky, and the PTSD pretty much dissipated and disappeared. And I'm sure other things most likely will come up, which I'm fine and okay with, but it just naturally just felt lighter and more connected and more at ease. And then when I started to go into my meditation practices, it was even deeper than I've ever gone before after this experience.
Thank you for sharing that intimate experience and being very vulnerable with the audience so they can have a bit of relatability and insight with their own experiences. Because some of these things aren't the things that are discussed openly. So, because like you just said, you went into a private group in Facebook to ask for the help. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of shame and guilt attached to being vulnerable and asking for help when we have these sensations that we really don't have the words to give it a story yet or give it an experience. So thank you for sharing that process. And I hope you'll be able to send me that photo so that I can put it on the art cover. That was intimacy with yourself, not looking externally for everybody else to validate you. You were there and accepted yourself with whatever you were feeling, and allowing there to be a safety to feel whatever you had to feel without giving it a certain narration, and just allowing it to be.
It was so empowering just to be able to be with myself and not have to like mom or dad or brother or anyone to like discuss or talk about. It was with me and myself. And it offered me to be even more courageous and more brave, and to use my words and to use my voice, and the reassurance and the reinforcement that I can do this, and I got this, and I have the support, and the universe is here for me, and the universe is love and is kind to me. And it just offered further expansiveness of that for myself.
You mentioned that you're creating a curriculum for teachers, a type of support group. Can you expand on that, of what you're bringing forth?
Yes. So I'm completed my doctoral training, and I've created a mindfulness meditation school professional course that teaches individuals foundational mindfulness meditation skills, such as the awareness of the breath, body scan, mindful movements, and the importance of tapping into or cultivating the awareness of the sensations that I'm experiencing in the present moment. So teachers and participants can start to cultivate some type of mindfulness practice, some type of awareness. And even if it's not a formal practice per se, cultivating some type of occupation-based mindfulness. So such as when I breathe in, let's say in this moment, can I notice my breath by my nostrils? Maybe I'm able to notice the warmth and the coolness. Can I notice my breath with the expansion and the contraction of my chest? Or maybe I can notice the expansion and contraction of my belly, or maybe somewhere else in my body. And it's starting to teach professionals and other staff, how can I connect to the minute by minute, moment by moment, hour by hour, so that I can cultivate awareness. And the intention of this is for individuals to start to cultivate look at what are my triggers, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and how can I start to look at that and perceive that and cultivate love and kindness and compassion in the present moment.
Beautiful.
And then the intention also is that modeling. So teachers, let's say if they're able to cultivate even that mindful minute during their school year for themselves, or they're able to cultivate a little bit of a meditation practice or that pause or that reset, there's that modeling, even if they're not directly teaching and they're not having the skills, the ability to teach it for their students through osmosis, their energy level will get radiated onto their students, and the teachers can serve as a model for the students in the classroom as well.
Yes, because we're feeling bodies that think.
Exactly.
So that's why the little humans energetically see things and they're being dismissed by it, being told that, no, the world looks this way. What you're feeling isn't really right, when actually they are seeing it in a correct way energetically. Yet a lot of people just don't want to be honest with what the world and how we're feeling with our emotions. We cover it up a lot and, portray all these wonderful fairy tale stories to make the world seem a certain way, when it doesn't need to be filled with a bunch of lies to appease people and comfort them. Where can the listeners find you?
So they can find me on my website, which is chaniemessinger.com, Chaniemessinger.com. They can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. They type in same Chanie Messinger. They can find me there. And for individuals that are interested, they can feel free to reach out and send me an email if they are interested in learning about mindfulness, meditation, occupational-based therapy for maybe some of their kiddos that might be having challenges. So I've kind of started and I've cultivated a very unique coaching, parenting approach to help parents learn mindfulness meditation, the importance of self-care, and also bringing in occupational therapy, such as the importance of movement, sensory processing, brain gyms, and kind of combining a few approaches to really cultivate some coaching.
And any teachers that may benefit from it also.
Mm-hmm. Anyone that ultimately that works with kids can benefit.
Because a lot of parents don't realize they're teachers.
Exactly. I think parents are teachers, social workers, psychologists. They are everything and anything. And sometimes with my job as an occupational therapist, I feel similarly as well, because my job entitles so many different things of what parents and teachers and other providers may do as well.
I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I greatly appreciate you and the service and the gifts that you're offering in the world. And I appreciate you just as an individual and who you are, Chanie, and our relationship that we have and our friendship. So continue shining bright. And I hope you will come back onto the podcast to have further discussions.
I'm incredibly humbled and grateful for our friendship, and so thankful for you and for everything that you're doing and continue to do. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Remember to be kind to yourself. Thank you for making it to the end. I appreciate you and your time. If you found any value in this conversation, I ask you to help us grow by subscribing to the Lift Oneself podcast, and more, sharing it out to others. The more that we have conversation and dialogue that are honest and open, that is when we can remove the stigmas around mental health. Until next time, remember, be kind and gentle with yourself. You matter.